Hello Tennos, up here, and today we are going to talk about bows, followed by a little bit on the lens, and then we're going to talk about nullifier bubbles. So first of all, apparently there is a few types of bows. If you head over to wiki, under bows, you can actually see a significant difference between things like the Etika and also the Zugi, I don't know how you pronounce that. Those weapons, they are crossbows, and what that means is that they are automatically triggered, so there is no charge time. They just go like pew 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 pew. Whereas the other bows, they actually have separate categories as well, and the two categories are short bows and long bows. There is a difference between short bow mechanics and long bow mechanics, and today we are going to talk about that. Now, I did not actually figure this out myself. I knew for a real long time that there are short bows and long bows, but I never really got to finding out what are the core differences. I'll leave the thank yous to the end of the video because there is also some other people that I'd like to give a shout out to. But yeah, so right now let's take a look at what is a longbow. So from this entire list, besides the crossbows, a longbow is something like the Daiku and also Lenz. These two are longbows, and as far as I can tell, every single bow, everything else is considered as a short bow. Right off the bat, if you were to compare the bows in this list, you actually see something that kind of stands out, which is the charge time. So you realize that all of the short bows has either 1 second or below charge time, and only the long bows like the Daiku and the Lenz has more than 1 second charge time. However, this is a little bit fuzzy, a little bit of a gray area. You can't really say that the charge time defines what category of bow it is in, because for example, if you take a look at the Cyaneous recta, it has only a 0.25 second, which is the fastest of them all, and you can't really say that it belongs in its own category. And it's also possible that in the future they might make a long bow that has a really short charge time, so yeah, it doesn't make that a short bow. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you could say that the majority of long bows have a longer charge time, but you can't really use the charge time to define what category of bow it is. So this is a little bit fuzzy, a little bit of in the gray area. However, the other stuff that I'm going to tell you, the differences, will be a little bit more obvious. The next way you could actually tell between a long bow and a short bow is by visually looking at it. Because a longbow is long, and in order to hoist a longbow, you actually need to fold it. So like over here, you can see the lens folding when it gets hoisted to the back. I could switch over to the Daiku, and the same thing is going to happen. The Daiku will be folded before you could hoist it. So another example will be this one. There you go. Next is the charge attack itself. If you're using a short bow, you realize that you could launch an attack without even charging. Just by clicking, you could start firing your arrow, and the longer you charge, supposedly you do more damage. And that is true, but the damage is not exactly more. It's actually like this. When it's fully charged, you do your normal damage. It's just that when you are not fully charged, you actually do a reduced damage. Now, fully charging your short bow, you also reduces the fall off. That means that your attacks is a little bit more accurate, and the damage is not just reduced when it's not fully charged. Something else is also reduced. So let me just show you what I mean. Something else is also in jeopardy, which is your critical. So over here you can see that my critical chance is 125%. This means that I have a 100% chance of doing a yellow crit and 25% chance of doing an orange crit. However, if I do not fully charge my weapon, I actually have a chance to, as in my critical chance actually reduces. So for example over here, so that's a critical again. There you go, you see that 10, that's not a critical, and I believe that you can't actually get a orange crit from doing this. So yeah, so this proves that my critical chance is no longer 125% if I do not fully charge my weapon. Now it's a little bit hard to test for status, so I don't really know if this actually affects status chance as well. So as you can see, if I'm fully charged, there is orange crits and there is always yellow crits. So for a longbow, it's a little bit different. You can't actually fire without fully charging. You could charge up halfway through, it won't fire. You could try clicking, it won't fire. Even if you are like 80% there, it still won't fire. It has to be fully charged before the arrow could actually get launched out. And there is also another drawback of the longbow, is that the moment it's fully charged, it will not stay fully charged for more than approximately 5 seconds. So unlike the short bow that you could sort of take aim for as long as you want, longbows, it will cancel itself after about 5 seconds. Now the last difference that I could tell between a longbow and a short bow is the fact that longbows has a 100% chance of proccing impact when the arrow hits the enemy. So for example, do you see that impact proc? Now this is actually relatively good, considering that staggers from impact is quite easy to judge. Like the movement is quite easy to judge, especially on a humanoid. So what you could do is, you don't have to be that accurate when, especially when the enemy is moving. Hit him and then aim for a headshot. And I think that is pretty useful. Now in case you're wondering, the lance works exactly the same as well. However, the projectile have to hit the enemy in order for the impact proc to occur. If you were to shoot at the floor, it does not cause that impact proc. So the projectile has to be the one that hits it. Now let's take a look at the lens. Now I know I'm like 1 whole month too late talking about lens now, ever since it came out, but I just recently got it and I've been having a lot of fun with it, so I just want to talk a little bit about it. Not the usual stuff that you have seen all other YouTubers talk about, so hopefully it'll be interesting for you. Now the first thing I want to point out is that the damage on this thing is really high. The only problem is probably the status on this weapon is only like 5%. And it's because of that, you can't really do corrosive. Even if you could proc corrosive on the enemy, your ammo capacity is so little and also your fire rate is so slow that it probably wouldn't be very useful, especially at high levels. On top of that, you don't have things like slash that could bypass armor. So your main problem here is damage at high levels against armored enemies, right? So that is the problem with the lens. However, it also has some few unique tricks that you could pull off to do a little bit more damage. You guys know, right? Like the first attack will cause the co-proc and then a little bit of damage, and then followed by an explosion that does a ton of damage. So that is how this weapon kind of works. Now the first initial damage and also the explosion damage both has a chance to proc status, so that is pretty cool. Depending on what you fire at, like for example Atlas' second ability, that wall of boulders, it will actually cause the lance arrow to explode twice, once on impact and another one when the time comes. So it could do potentially like double the damage. So that's the first explosion and that's the second one. Now if you were to shoot on something like, for example, Frost the Snow Globe, the same effect can be also seen. So that's the first explosion, that's the second explosion. Ouch. Okay, now I want you guys to focus on the gas procs. So we know that this weapon has really bad status chance, but I want you to pay attention to the gas procs that's happening. Do you see that? It's like 11k and 6k, and it's doing a lot of damage. Now we're gonna come over here and we're gonna try on this bunch. There we go. Again, pay attention to the gas procs. Again, 6k. Do you see that? Now you see 100. The value 100 is actually gas procs from the initial hit, which the one that comes with the co-proc. Okay, now let's try with this bunch. I want to make sure I don't fall, so alright. Ooh, again, 6k. Alright, and it hurts a lot. So what's going on? Like, we know that this weapon has really poor status chance, but then again, I'm proccing really frequently. So this is something that I like to call AOE proc-ing. So let me just show you the build and I'll walk you through and explain as I go through. Now this is just for showcase. In real life, in the mission, I will not actually go with this setup. Here you can see that I have 19.9% status chance, all thanks to split chamber and the dual stat mods, and I make sure that my gas damage is the highest. Now the reason why is because we want to add weight to your gas damage such that if it ever do proc, you want to make sure that it is a gas proc. Alright, and now what you need to know is the concept. When I say AOE proc-ing, what I mean is that when you do a proc on a bunch of enemies. So imagine right now you have 8 enemies together. Alright, each one of those enemy will have a 20%, this 19.9% chance of getting a proc. And chances are one of them is going to get a proc, and chances are that proc is going to be a gas proc. Now since gas is an AOE, so the whole group or the whole bunch of that enemy is going to get a massive amount of AOE damage. Now this is provided that the proc happens at the explosion damage. That is where the damage is really high. And yeah, and that's the idea. So chances of proc-ing is actually really high if you have a big or large enough audience to receive your AOE proc-ing. So think about that. I feel like the lens also works well with some Warframes, especially like maybe Limbo, because it's safer. In case you were to pull off something that's really close, you could just go into the rift and not get damage. You can use Hydroid with his Undertow. You can also use Volt for his shield, Iron Skin, and many other abilities that could actually prevent you from dying from Lenz. However, personally, I don't really mind this because I feel like if I mess up, I should, receive the punishment. And also, I don't always play alone, so it's kind of okay. There's always teammates around to help me up. I would actually much prefer to play with Nova because of her ultimate skill. It kind of feels like that massive damage that you're doing with the lens is being carried over to other enemies as well, due to Nova's 4th ability, which is the molecular prime. I also feel like Ivara's 2nd ability is more worth using with the lens because that AOE damage with the 2nd ability is multiplier. It stacks really well and it does a lot of damage. Now I believe this ability is sort of bugged with the lens at the moment because that first initial hit, as in the default fire, will still hit even though the projectile itself has not reached the enemy. So let me just show you what I mean. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the 2nd ability, take aim, and fire. So see, that is the damage that it would have happened without this projectile, and this is now the projectile. Oh my god, do you see that damage? Like 1,000,000 something. Okay, now let's talk about Green Lantern's worst nightmare. It's a nullifier bubble, because with a bow and arrow, first of all, you need to hit many times to reach the enemy. And by the way, just so you know, this enemy is only level 20. There's something here that I did not cover in a previous video when we talk about nullify bubbles, how the damage is being calculated. Why is it that shotguns is like so bad against nullify bubbles? Because of the damage cap, and also damage is calculated by frame rates. So yeah. Over there, I did not mention something which I'm not too sure if it's implemented later or did I just like totally miss this from the beginning of the game. So there is a drone. The bubble is actually created by this drone, and if you destroy this drone, the whole bubble will pop. Alright, now it's different from actually popping it by shooting it, because when the bubble gets so small and it gets destroyed, this drone survives, it can recreate the bubble. But if you destroy the drone instead, then he can no longer recreate that bubble. You literally took away his bow. Now in an actual mission, the room might be really small and that thing will be really hard to spot and really hard to shoot. And if you go too close to Nullifier, you could also realize that you can't really shoot it without being blocked by the bubble. So that is a problem. The next problem is that as the enemy levels, so does the health of that thing. It scales really high, and in a way it's like an object. It does not actually receive any procs, so you can't really pull off like gas proc or viral or anything like that, but it does seem to get crits. So unlike normal objects, it could get crits. And as you can see, the health of that thing, it's really a lot. So I guess at higher level it's actually easier to pop the bubble instead of going for the drone, and at lower level it's easier to go for the drone instead of actually popping the bubble, especially if you do not have a really good weapon. Okay, that's pretty much it for this video. I'd like to give a special thank you to Continue for actually helping me realize that there is a difference between short bows and long bows, and thus this whole research began. Also, I would like to give a special thank you to Kane, the guy that actually made a banner for me. Before I was like using some weird arrows on my YouTube channel, but right now I actually have a actual Warframe banner. And just like to let you guys know that I do accept things like this. If you are artistic, you could actually send me your drawings and stuff, and I'll be happy to put them on. Especially if it's something that I really like, I'll probably leave them on longer. And also I'd like to thank the guy from DarkGaming EVolution channel for making a video trying to prove one of my theories,
which I like to call the proof of the Zelp theory. Now if you don't know,
and I think it's really cool that you do not actually just like pass it off as one of your own findings, and you really actually mentioned me in your video, so thank you for that. Okay, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.